Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Coffee Break Live Update. So we're going to just wait a few moments till some other folks show up. There we go. Get some more light on the subject. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is June 30th, 2020. June 30th, 2020. It is a Tuesday. And it's the last day of June, just before the tarred month of July. And we've got a number of things going on in the sky today. And thank you all for those of you who are aware of it, have been sending me birthday greetings and so forth. And I really appreciate it. It's really been, it's been an interesting day, let's put it that way. Nothing boring with 6 planets retrograde, and one of them being Mercury. Just got off a chat with a tech support specialist on a website issue. Anyway, so boring stuff. Today, well gosh, let's just take a look at what the sky is doing. We have a moon Uranus opposition, or we just did have one. I'm going to have to refresh this. Yeah, refresh the chart so we can get a more accurate look at things. Greetings everybody. Say hi if you can. Yeah, that is past. We had Moon Uranus opposition this morning, Moon in Scorpio. That was a bit interesting. But we also have a conjunction between Mercury retrograde and the Sun in Cancer. So a kind of uneven emotional thinking day. So if you are a water sign, or if you have any angles in the water signs, or Capricorn, or Aries, or Libra, you could be feeling like, a little forgetful, maybe a little absent-minded, maybe feeling like you can't quite catch up with things that are going on. But today is the day that Jupiter and Pluto are meeting the second time. Last time was in March when they were exact together at, I think 22 Capricorn or 23. Today it's 24 Capricorn, but they're both going backwards in the sky together. So they're holding hands, and Pallas Athena is there too. So we've got the goddess of diplomacy and mediation. So there's some sort of meeting, I think, if you will imagine, sort of not a business meeting, sort of a negotiation, because Pallas has her role as a mediator, a negotiator, a diplomatic. And so there's something going on between the benefic tendencies, or the optimistic and effusive tendencies of Jupiter, suppressed certainly, or muted in Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn's relentless demand for transformation and change. So those two, those two characters are being mediated by Pallas, which is a feminine archetype. This is good. So it gives the feminine a voice in all of this, and I think that's an interesting prognosis. But the other interesting event is Mars at 1 degree of Aries, and that is going to be ongoing to January of 2021. And when it finally does exit Aries, then after going backwards and forwards a couple of times, 3 times I think, then we've got a meetup with Uranus in the mid degrees of Taurus. And that'll, just about at the time Uranus is backed down to the early degrees of Taurus by retrograde, and then Mars and Uranus will meet up. That's too far down the line to really focus on right now. But archetypally, and how does this play out with Mars and Aries? Again, personal planets or inner planets aren't a big deal normally because they don't hang around long in one place. They keep moving very fast. Mercury especially, Venus as well. But Mars this time is going to take almost 6 months to complete its little cycle through the sign that it is it's an exalted situation with Mars and Aries. So it has more prominence, it has more oomph, it has more get up and go. And So Mars can be, yeah, let's take action, let's do something, let's stay focused, let's stay on target, let's stay on goal. But it also can be easily frustrated, easily irritated, easily apt to react. And that is probably the biggest caution with this whole thing, especially when it gets to 22 to 25 degrees of Aries and starts squaring Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter at those late degrees of Capricorn. And that can create a tension, that can create an explosive situation. So we have to watch where the two hot spots are, which are August, mid-October, and again toward the end of its cycle when it moves around at the end of the year from December, say from the solstice right through to the end of the year and early January. So those 3 times are going to be very sensitive times. August, October, December. December crossing over into January. Prediction is dangerous with any of this kind of stuff, but 2020 so far has been a time of surprises in a way, not always very nice ones. And with Mars and Aries, we have physical kind of effects, physical, geophysical, potentially. It could be sudden shifts and breaks in things, reactions to things. It's hot, it's cardinal fire. Maybe that means wildfires. Maybe that means wild temperature swings. Who knows? I'm not going to sit here and predict, but I'm going to say be ready for anything and stay as positive as possible. Stay in your heart. Stay completely grounded. Do things that mitigate any kind of anxiety or fear or irritation. Calming, things that calm. We're talking chamomile tea, rose quartz, time in nature, meditation, body work if you can get it, certainly, and things of that nature. So that's very important. And being able to communicate with friends, having someone there who can listen, someone who can hold your hand or whose shoulder you can cry on, or whatever the case may be. This is putting a lot of people under pressure right now. A lot of people, one could say, yes, we're going through a major evolutionary shift, and that's not going to be something that's over at the end of 2020. It goes on for the decade. How do we look after ourselves? How do we look after our loved ones and those close to us? How do we look after each other in a general communitive sense, world community sense? The craziness seems to be getting crazier. I mean, it is not very hard to look around and see that people are feeling a bit unhinged, resentful, frustrated. Don't feed into it. There's enough out there for everybody already. It's not going to help to be reactive. With Mars and Aries is certainly a powerful time to act decisively. But remember, this isn't something you sit down and you think about and you plot and plan and strategize to wit's end. Mars in Aries is an energy that says, if you feel it, do it. Don't think about it. If you feel it, do it. Impulsiveness isn't usually looked upon with any kind of great admiration in our culture. People, who doing things impulsively are considered to be irresponsible, not thinking about the consequences, not looking at all the possible, outcomes, poor planning, all that kind of stuff. But with Mars and Aries, it's the first instinct and act on it. But one of the things that helps in your situation, wherever you are, and especially if you have anything sensitive in Aries, Libra, Cancer, or Capricorn, is to say to anybody who's within earshot of you, this is what I'm going to do. And then do it. Don't stop and wait for approval. Don't stop and wait for a response that says, well, maybe that's okay. Well, I don't know. Have you thought about this? Have you considered that? Don't get in a debate. Just act. Just do it. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Nike. You've got to recognize that there's a certain qualified and solid validity to following your spirit without, let me emphasize this, following one's spirit without hesitation. Mars in Aries is a perfect poster child for that kind of spiritual sentiment, if you will, or thesis, or affirmation. Is that following your spirit without hesitation means exactly that. You don't stop and go, well, I don't know if that's okay. You just do it. It's not that consequences aren't important, but when you live in a more and more of a place of the now, consequences take on less and less significance. That may sound very, very counterintuitive, or really you might grate against it. When you're living more and more in the now and less ruled or controlled or conditioned by time or by spatial limitations, then following one's spirit out of hesitation is the only option. There is no thought to anything else. The idea of consequences becomes less severe or in one's consciousness, but it also becomes less severe in one's experience. How can that work? Well, I think it works because you have a clear sense of being a lens and a channel for the divine or for spirit. You have stepped away from fear and polarity, or polarized thinking anyway. You're still subject to the forces of yin and yang, or masculine, feminine, positive, negative. But the thing is, you're bringing them more into balance by residing in that place of now here, or nowhere, no time. And when you're in that place, you know in an instant, just like a Jedi Knight, move. You don't sit and negotiate with yourself. You don't time it. You just do it. So you feel, the opponent's laser bolt coming at you. You don't think about it. Boom, you've got that lightsaber right there to meet the bolt. It's instinctual. It's intuitive. It is completely based on how focused you are in remembering who you are and being completely now here. So that's the more creative use of this energy, this Mars and Aries energy, that we're going to be bathed in, immersed in, involved with, experiencing, reflected back to us over the next 6 months. All right? So that's the astrology update today. It's a significant day for a lot of reasons. I know we have the eclipse coming up on the 5th, which is on Sunday? Friday. Oh, I'm in the wrong month. It's on Sunday. It is on Sunday. I was right the first time. This is another lunar eclipse. This is going to be the subject for Thursday afternoon's Coffee Break Live update. And no, I didn't have time to get the coffee ready. So hope you're enjoying something, a cuppa. So much for the astrology right now, which is a lot, there's a lot of energy there. I was going to bring into play another bit, because I've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of months around the nature of electricity, magnetism, electromagnetic radiation, electricity radiation. How does it affect biology? How does it affect human consciousness? How does it affect the planetary atmosphere, the infrastructure of the planet, if it will do that. So it's important I think, to take into consideration that when you are like a fish in a fish bowl and you're constantly feeling the sensation of water, you don't think of yourself as being in a fishbowl. You don't think of yourself as being in water. In fact, it's second to your nature, so to speak. You've become so inured or comfortable with it, or we walk around on the planet all the time. We're breathing oxygen, we're breathing air, hopefully, not a lot of pollution. But we don't think about it, do you? You're walking, or you're sitting in your office, or you're having dinner, and you don't sit there consciously aware of the fact that you're respirating. that you're actually being breathed. We are not conscious breathers. So we are autonomic breathers. We're constantly breathing because this is exactly the signal coming from the motor neuron section of our brains and telling the diaphragm to raise and lower and the lungs to expand and contract. And we feel that, right? When we stop and you pay attention, you feel the breath. Dolphins, whales, they have to breathe. They forcibly, consciously have to breathe. We are not wired that way as mammals. They are mammals as well. But we are wired differently. And so when you don't pay attention to the breath, you don't realize you're in an envelope, a sea of oxygen, or an atmosphere. Same with electricity. Electricity as we know it today and take for granted was introduced only 145 to 155 years ago. So we are not as aware anymore of being in the fishbowl and in the water that our relatives, our ancestors were in the 1840s and 50s. In fact, earlier than that. Let's go back to the late 1700s, early 1800s. And there's a guy named Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian mystic, who lived between the 1860s and 1930s. And he developed quite a system of metaphysics and psychic development, spiritual development. You might recognize his name because, yes, the Waldorf schools did start from Rudolf Steiner's schools. And the one thing that's interesting about him, and I don't agree with everything that he states regarding this particular subject, at least not at this juncture. Research is an ongoing thing. Contemplation about what one is researching is also ongoing. But one of the statements is he made in 1927, I think it was, I may be wrong in that, or 1917, was this: electricity, once and for all, is not intended to work into the realm of the living. It is not meant to help living things especially. It cannot do so. You must know that electricity is at a lower level than that of living things. So when we think of what medical science or physics has said about electrons around an atom, or that our neurological net in the brain and the central nervous system are firing, they're operating through electrical signals, but that electricity is organic. It's operating at a different frequency and a different range. Okay, so he goes on to say, whatever is alive, the higher it is, the more it will tend to ward off electricity. It is a definite repulsion. If now you train a living thing to use as a means of defense where there is nothing for it to ward off, the living creature will thereby become nervous or fidgety and eventually sclerotic. Now I had to look up the word sclerotic. That was a tongue twister. S-C-L-E-R-O-T-I-C. Most people who are physicians or doctors probably know what that means. Becoming rigid and unresponsive, losing the ability to adapt. So, in that sense, he also had a lot of things to say about electric currents and radiations and how, in Goethe's time, the famous German philosopher in the 1700s, did not have to contend with telegraph wires, did not have to contend with electrical wires. He was more closely aligned electromagnetically to the Earth's electromagnetic field and to what goes on in nature. So there's that thing about the Schumann resonance that everybody's talking about these days. The Schumann resonance pulses at naturally or normally pulses at 7.83 hertz or cycles per second. And the human brain waves also pulse at 7.83 to 7.87 cycles per second. So we are in symbiotic harmony with the planet herself, with her heartbeat, our brainwave patterns, her brainwave patterns, if you will. What was introduced 150 years ago is alien to this environment. Okay. So what I think Steiner was trying to indicate is that living tissue, living organisms, their makeup psychically and biologically is of a higher order of electromagnetism than electricity that we know of. This would go a long way to explain, I think, why we've seen a very, very significant increase in almost every category of chronic disease over this period of time, especially heart disease, multiple sclerosis, cancer, and flu pandemics. I think this is a burgeoning or an infant science. Magnetobiology is an infant science. But how does this figure in spiritually? Rudolf Steiner was unequivocal in how he thought that electricity was actually dumbing people down. Now, there was a study from a few years back that I read that the internet is actually dumbing people down. Social media and smartphones are dumbing people down. This is a cognitive issue that has got a lot of people in the psychotherapy fields and in anything having to do with the biological side of things in concert with that, has people concerned that there is a general lessening of worldwide intelligence because of the fact that we're interacting with wireless radiation, social media content or mediums, and so forth. When you add all that together, you start getting a different picture about what we see happening now, sociologically, politically, economically, medically, everything. I'm not going to sit here and draw strong dots or connect dots for you. That's not my job. Your job is to go out and connect them, first of all, with reason, logic, but also with your heart and with your body, and get a sense of what is real, what makes sense. So I would challenge you, ever more so, to learn the art of grounding. I would challenge you ever more so to seek out solitude in nature, as far away from man-made power lines, Wi-Fi antennas, and everything else, so that you can have a taste of what it's like to live in an environment that is not polluted, that you could live in the water of the fishbowl without the contaminants. That is the proof of the pudding. Now, the thing is, we never can stay long enough in that to really feel a quantitative difference over a long period of time, unless you go onto one of these executive retreats and you have to surrender your smartphone at the water's edge when you step onto an island, and you're kept kind of apart from civilization for 2 weeks or so, and you don't have any interaction with that kind of stuff. Most of us can't afford it, or can't afford the time to go do that, and right now, of course, we don't seem to have the ability to travel very far in an unregulated way to be able to do that. However, when you go out on a walk, leave your phone at home. If you have to take your phone with you, put it on flight mode. If you are expecting some special call, that's not the time to go out for a walk. Okay? And I don't mean just a walk, I mean spending time far enough away from any electrical source that you possibly can, and experiment with it. Experiment with it. You do it often enough, or if you have the luxury and the time and the money to spend more than 3 days away from all sources of man-made electromagnetic sources, then do it. See, and keep a diary or keep a journal or something, and see what happens to your imaginative power. See what happens to your dreams. See what happens to your physical sensations. See what happens to how much time will slow down. Watch the changes in your breathing. Watch the changes in how fast you eat. Watch the changes in the quality of your meditation. Watch the changes in how you feel and can feel. If you close your eyes, you can feel your heart. You can feel your respiration. You can feel the gurgling in different parts of your body. You can feel the blood coursing through your veins. When you start living at more of that level of feeling, you are actually tuning then to the Earth's planetary intelligence, to the Earth's pulse, the Earth's respiration. When you're tuning into that, you are tuning to Source. All right? Through the physical medium. You don't have to disengage from the body or disengage from the physical medium in order to experience this directly. That was That's part of the problem with a lot of the traditions from the East, for example, which would have you believe that the only way that you're going to get ascended, or the only way you're going to get enlightened, is to completely reject materiality or matter. Materialism is a different thing. I'm not referring to, going out on a shopping therapy trip. I'm talking about the material or the matter. That we become more sensitive to the fact that spirit is in matter, that spirit is matter, that source is matter, okay? That there is no division or separation, that they're actually merged. And so this comes back to this model of that I was explaining the other day about time. Well, time is a spindle rather than a linear line. And the spindle has all these different events. Maybe I didn't do this. I did this for a client. That's what it was. And Neil Donald Walsh refers to this in one of his books. So time is a spindle, and it's vertical, and time is vertical, and every event, every experience is a little piece of paper we put on that spindle. Right? We experience that, oh, well, there's that experience, but it's all happening at the same time. It's all happening in the same place, the same plane of reality. Consider the possibility that's exactly all the way life is, all of it, all that we experience. It's a vertical thing. So anything having to do with nature or the planet, if the planet, Earth, if she is conscious, in other words, she is sentient, then there is no difference between her sentient nature and Source's sentient nature. And therefore there is no difference between her sentient nature and ours. Native Americans know this. Almost all indigenous shamanic traditions know this. It is only us in the West that have divorced ourselves from that and divorced ourselves from nature, and we don't know it because we're souped up. We're all souped up in this electronic stew, all right? This technological stew, and it's not just a huge distraction. It's more than that. I'm not going to get into that stage of it yet because it's about getting used first to get into an experimental, curious state of let's find out how my imagination would feel, how my connection would feel if I changed context, if I changed environment, if I changed my routine, if I changed my habit, right? So that's what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm far be it from me. Anything that you hear out of my mouth today, or any of these impromptu talks, these casual talks, if it resonates with you, then hold on to it and play with it. If it doesn't, take it over, chuck it out the window, and don't look at it again. Don't look at it again. Don't think about it. If it isn't practical and doesn't work for you, what's the point? All right? Maybe you're different, or maybe you're from somewhere different. I don't know, and I respect that in any choice you make. So it's got to be completely at your discretion and at your prompting from within. Again, part of this Mars and Aries thing, is it something intuitively you want to experiment with? Well, good, great, fine. Get back to me, or post something later on to me, or put it in a comment to a future Coffee Break Live and say, hey, I tried this for 3 days. It was amazing. I had this revelation, or I had this amazing dream, or, gosh, I get visitations from, the 28th dimension. Any of that kind of stuff. This is the core of what vision quests are by Native Americans. The core is not just to go out and be able to survive. The idea is to go out and reharmonize oneself so completely with the planetary and nature intelligence that you can relax and know that you're supported and know that you'll survive, and that you have what is such a rare gift for many today, and that people are spending thousands of dollars to go off to the Amazon and have an ayahuasca plant medicine experience just so they can reconnect with that, so they can cut through the bullshit in a big hurry, all right? Because they got to get back to that, job waiting for them in the city of London. You don't have to do that, all right? A lot of the times, the best thing you can do is not go to that workshop or go to that retreat. It's just to sit there and learn how to breathe again so that you can actually feel what it feels like to be in a sea of oxygen and atmosphere. And then see what happens, okay? It takes devotion. That's the only thing it takes. It's the will to will, and then be consistent with it, I guess. So more on the electrical thing later, but I just wanted to read that real quick quote from this speech that, or this lecture. He gave lectures, he gave dissertations, he gave classes, if it were, as it were, Rudolf Steiner. Amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy. Again, don't know if I buy everything that he's put down around this. He's obviously the first anti-vaxxer. You know, I posted that on last week, and boy, that post went crazy about his views on vaccination and what it does to people spiritually, to the soul. And, you know, so it's like, please don't tell, you know, any of the powers that be or the local authority, or they'll go after all the Steiner schools. Well, I found out that here in the UK, a lot of, in the wake of the lockdown, a lot of the Waldorf schools have been shut down or co-opted because they don't conform to the normal educational system. Same in Ireland. I don't know about in the US, but if you have any information about what's going on with the Waldorf schools in the United States, I'd love to hear about it, because I personally know a Waldorf teacher in Arizona. Yeah, I'd like to know, because they are unique. I did talk to somebody in Sweden today, in Stockholm, who said that their child goes to a Waldorf school, and they've kept the government over there at arm's length for the better part of the last 4 or 5 years, because in Sweden it's mandatory for every school, every kid in every school to have access to an iPad. All right. Not in a Waldorf school. They don't allow phones, they don't allow iPads, and anytime the government asks them, well, how are you getting along with this technological update that, you know, that you're engaged with? Oh yeah, we're getting there. So they keep putting them off, And so far it's worked. Nobody comes around to check. So this is part of the choice factor over the next 10 years. It's not just about, you know, the pollution that's causing climate change. It's not just about the pollution that's causing racism, mind pollution, all right, spiritual pollution. It's about the pollution that we live in all the time. We don't see, we don't think, we don't even question it. We don't question it because we're not aware of it, because nobody told us, or nobody was aware. We have just taken it for granted. And as a result, we have taken a lot of other things for granted. And it's time to stop taking things for granted and question and push and poke and prod and ask. And if you can't get an answer, you can demand it. And if you don't get a result, then you go your own way. You opt out whatever way is appropriate for you. You listen to your spirit and you follow it without hesitation, with each and every breath and with each and every step you take. And it's just that simple. Sovereignty is just that simple. I know everybody says, well, I'm afraid about what my friends are going to say, or my parents, or my relatives, or, you know, my children. I was reminded by a friend, there was this guy named Jesus who often said to people who often offered that excuse, do not be concerned for them, follow me. You know, he who will not, you know, denounce themselves and those that he cares about for my name's sake doesn't deserve. And what he was referring was not himself. Jesus was referring to the prize of enlightenment, the prize of freedom, the prize of liberation will require you to renounce, not denounce. I misspoke there. Renounce things that have a hold on you. Any feng shui master worth their salt will tell you that everything you own owns you. So either you use things with the idea that you don't own them, ever, that you don't possess things, or they will possess you. It's the same with people, it's the same with families, it's the same with societies and cultures. So if you want to be free, if you value freedom above all else, the freedom to be yourself, to redefine who you are, and the next biggest and best version of that, then you're going to have to, and I'm going to have to, and everybody's going to have to, start trying to please everybody and please yourself. There's no crime or sin in that. Do no harm, but please yourself. You know, respect others' choices and where they want to be and how they want to think and how they want to pray and all that stuff, but do your thing. And everything will work out much, much better, because you're in a better place. And boy, if anything this world needs more right now, it's just general happiness, joy, and love. And any time you can give that to yourself or experience that for yourself, it's like honey running down a rope. When it gets to the bottom of the rope, it spreads out and other people get it one way or another. You don't have to be worried about that. You don't have to be going, gee, I wonder if this is helping anybody. Let that go. You're not in charge of the how, all right? Your only choice is your choice, your decision, your will to will. That's all there is. So here it is, my birthday, and that was my present to you guys. And because, you know, I'm kind of identified with hobbits, and hobbits give other people the presents on their birthdays. And I want to wish you all the very best, and thanks for tuning in during all of this craziness of the last 4 months. Which did give me the inspiration to start doing these, by the way. So I really am grateful for the opportunity. And then when we're staying in more gratitude about the current opportunities and the current gifts that we have, we can obviously generate more of them and manifest more of them. So have blessings on your journey. Have a fantastic afternoon and a fantastic July 1. And we have July 4th coming up. Ooh, I don't think we'll see any fireworks here in the UK, but there may be fireworks no matter what, with the first eclipse with Mars and Aries. We'll see what happens. Much love to you all. Blessings on your journey. That's enough for me. Over and out.